Hey everyone, it's Paul with reporting live from my sofa. How are ya? I'm doing pretty good here. The sofa has been in a bit of a disarray today, if you will. I was filming a podcast for our new podcast earlier about anxiety, at which point I had an anxiety attack. It wasn't pretty, but it was great for content. Anyways, yeah, we've had major storms here today, as you can see out back. So I've just been able to fire up the filming again, and I was like, let me come on here. Hopefully I can get. I was so excited to make this video, y'all. Oh my gosh. So let's go ahead and just talk a little bit about what it is. We are going to be looking at the case of Scott Nelson, and the victim in this case is Jennifer Fulford. This is going on at the time of this filming. Today is Monday, July 8th. At the time of this filming, they're in the penalty phase. He has already been found guilty, so I'm coming into the game a little bit late on this. But I started watching this, and this is one of those cases that when you watch 5 minutes of it, you're like, I can't turn this off now. It's just so shocking on so many levels. So what I'm going to be doing for the series about him is essentially just going over the parts of the testimony and things of that nature that really jumped out to me that I feel like is worth making commentary on, and that's it. So without further ado, let's review. What we're going to be doing for this particular video is we are going to go over just some preliminary type stuff to get you paint a picture of who Jennifer was, what exactly took place, and then we're going to go discuss the opening statements. Jennifer Fulford was the house manager to a gentleman named Reed Berman and was a nanny to his son Oliver and his daughter as well. The daughter was a little bit older. Oliver was grade school age, and that's what she did. She worked for them for about 7 years. Now, we're going to review his testimony in a different video because that kind of goes into describing a lot more about what type person she was, which, of course, in all these cases, she was an amazing person. What I want to do real quick now is just kind of go over preliminary of what took place so that we're all on the same page, and then get into the opening statements. So essentially what happened is that Scott Nelson, who was a transient on federal probation, and he was living on the streets of Winter Park, Florida, he would eventually force his way one day, I believe it was September 27th, into Mr. Berman's home when Jennifer Fulford opened the door to collect a UPS package. And what he would do is restrain her with ties, wrap her in a comforter, and then put her in the trunk of her own car, transport her to a Wells Fargo, where he took $300 out of her account at the ATM. Now, during this entire event, this is just one of the tragedies of this, her cell phone kept ringing over and over and over, and it was her family calling to tell her about the birth of her new grandchild, who she was going to go meet the next day. And in some of the testimony later, Scott says, well, her phone kept ringing over and over, so I turned it off. And it just, I have goosebumps right now at the whole thought of really, like, that's what was going on in her life, and you're doing this. Just heinous. So Nelson would take Fulford to a vacant lot on Fenton Street, and in one of the interviews he was like, she cried and pleaded for her life, but he still decided to kill her. And some of his more than stellar quotes from this interview were, I'm not going to let this fill in the blank testify against me, he told detectives. She wouldn't stop screaming, so I duct taped her whole effing head. That's what we're dealing with, y'all. And it gets worse. Y'all, it gets worse. He takes the stand himself, and that's, again, another video. My mouth was on the floor. Let's continue. So now Jennifer died, of course, and her body would be found several days later on September 30th, still bound and gagged, face down in a vacant field. So that's kind of just a basic overview of what took place. And many of these details are played out in the stand and testimony, and we'll be going over them more. Now, his victimization of Jennifer Fulford and her family continues. I don't know what it is with these guys, and mostly I'm right now speaking of Brent Christensen, who continue to victimize the family. These are random crimes. There is no tie to these victims. I mean, it's just that much anger and discord with life. And I'm just like, I mean, how do they even, I can't get there as to how they can do this to other people and their families. The trial opened up with the state, and she describes just a horrific scene. She goes into the victim being bound with duct tape on her face, and the duct tape was, strangulation. There's many forms of death, ways that she could have died during this. Strangulation, because he had the duct tape so much on her face that there's no way she could breathe. She had 2 superficial stab wounds on her back and 5 stab wounds to her front. Now I'm just going to go over some of the information that came out during the opening statements. So September 27th, 2017 is the day of the event. Again, she worked for the gentleman, Mr. Berman, who was very wealthy, it seems. She was like his house manager, his nanny. Sounds like, he maybe separated from his wife, and so she basically ran the household for him. Now, on this day that things went wrong, the first sign that things were not going well is when she did not arrive at 3:15 to pick Mr. Berman's son Oliver up at school. And the father eventually would have to go to school and get him, and he returned home, and Jennifer's purse was there, but she was gone, her car was gone. And so this led him to calling the police, and eventually a missing persons report being made, because this was very out of character for her. Now, law enforcement learned that someone had used her ATM that day, and they obtained video footage of the man using her card from Wells Fargo. Her boss assisted in getting some of the info from OnStar service that led them to Jennifer's car the next day in a public parking lot. And her body was found in the vacant field on September 30th. They identified the man in the ATM footage, and they arrested him in Jacksonville on October 1st, who ended up being Scott Nelson. Now, the state says that the defendant timeline in the case began on September 16th, so about 11 days before the actual event took place. And she tells the jury that they're going to see a video of him going into Walmart. Y'all, let's pause. Please hold for a second. Is it not a thing in all of these cases where these people go into Walmart, they literally buy the most incriminating stuff, and they are so all over video doing it? I mean, they're using cards and this and that, and they're holding the items up as they leave. And I will forever just be like, I mean, thank God they do that because it helps convict them. But in the same note, I'm just like, what are you thinking? Like, how do you arrive? Like, there's such a disconnect there. I'm like, surely you have watched any kind of TV to realize that by the time you even think about going to Walmart, you're on videotape. Like, before you even get in your car to leave the house, like they're watching you. They want to know what you're going to buy. They're infiltrating your thoughts. It's coming up on your phone, the whole 9 yards. So this part just blows my mind, y'all. He goes into Walmart. He buys a hat that says UCF. He buys bright blue shoes, duct tape, zip ties, and he buys a knife that ends up matching a knife that was found near Jennifer's body. Now, all these things are going to become relevant because as the prosecution lays this out, you're just like, what? I mean, like, this guy literally might as well have just gone and killed her and then gone to the police station and said, this is what I just did. They also have him on video going into the Publix where the victim's car was found later on in the day after he used her ATM card. He is on the Publix footage wearing the bright blue shoes that he got at Walmart. He leaves there and he gets on a bus. He takes it downtown, then takes another bus to Winter Park. He then used the ATM again, and he's wearing the hat that he bought at Walmart. He goes then to an Amtrak station, buys a ticket, I believe to Jacksonville. So he goes to the store and he buys a pizza while he's waiting. He changes shirts at the train station and throws the shirt he was wearing away. And he is then shown getting off the train in Jacksonville in the early morning hours. And he is also on video in Jacksonville using Jennifer's ATM card. Now, several months after he was arrested, he writes a letter to law enforcement telling them where to find the keys to Jennifer's vehicle. And the keys end up being exactly where they said they would be. Now, in the car, the items that they found in there were a king-size duvet cover that ended up being Mr. Berman's king-size cover from his bed in the master bedroom. And they found a single beer in the console cup holder. Now, the beer bottle matched ones from Mr. Berman's house. And on the beer bottle in the car was Scott Nelson's DNA. So, do what you will with that. A bag with a white t-shirt that matched someone the defendant was wearing in one of the videos was also found in the car. And they also found a white towel that he was wearing around his neck in one of the videos at the ATM. They found a watch that he was also wearing that had some kind of very unique band on it or something. He was seen in the ATM video wearing that, and the watch was in there as well. The t-shirt, towel, and watch all had blood on them. So let's just stop there for a second and just talk about that. So you see how literally they were able to sit here and just pinpoint every last thing. And each step he made, he was like, I want you to know that I was in the house. So I'm going to take an object from the house and leave it in the car with my DNA. And then he did literally, like, the worst things you can literally do when you commit a crime is to go to Walmart and go to ATMs and use somebody else's card. I mean, y'all, I get nervous go to the ATM myself, and I'm never doing anything wrong there. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I just get, like, you know, hands up. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that you're committing a crime, and again, when we get into his taking the stand and being questioned about this stuff, I mean, the things that he tries to say and counteract this is just like, you're, what? You know, what? So... But again, I mean, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, there's no forethought into this whatsoever. I mean, he just left this trail of crumbs that leads right to him. So, and again, thank God he did. But, you know, I just don't even understand, like, what did he think he was going to do? You know, what did they think did they think they're going to get away with it? Because it's so obvious that they're not. And maybe being in that moment, I mean, I guess somebody who is going to kill somebody isn't a clear thinker to begin with. So I try and apply some sense and rationale to it, and I just can't do it. Anyways, let's talk about the defense. Now, the defense's opening statement. Y'all, okay, now, I was a little bit harsh on the defense in the Tim Jones Jr. trial. Okay, if you could, like, I like to compare these cases and look at the legalities of it and, like, how the stuff is presented. So... the defense in this case, I'm just like, they truly have nothing. I mean, there's nothing. Tim Jones Jr.'s case, I felt like they had nothing because he was lying about being insane, but he was going with that. You know, in this, there is no, oh, I'm insane, I'm this or that. I mean, there's just, it's obvious he's guilty. He admits this on the stand later. So the defense is kind of just there, if that makes sense. And I mean, that's my opinion of him. I mean, I feel he's an older gentleman, and I feel bad for him because I'm like, I mean, this guy is just awful. You know, it's just awful. And I feel bad that this man's having to defend him. I don't hold that against him because, then again, I don't know anything about the defense right now. I'm assuming he's probably a public defender of some sort, or maybe a special public defender. Regardless, it is what it is. It's his job. So the defense's opening statement. He starts talking about the National Archives building in Washington, D.C., and he basically leads this into the Bill of Rights, a conversation about the Bill of Rights, and specifically the right to be tried by a fair and impartial jury. And he talks about how important the jury is. He talks about reasonable doubt, and he walks away from the podium, and it's at times like he kind of walks away, and it's very hard to hear him. It takes him, I don't even know if he was up there for 5 minutes, y'all. And never says that his client is not guilty, because I don't even think that's a whole, thing. You know what I mean? But basically he just hits on the whole thing about reasonable doubt, and then kind of turns away and walks off, and I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? I just was like, oh wow, that's what we're dealing with. But a lot of this makes sense as it gets further in. So on that note, those are really the main points I wanted to bring up about the opening statements. Now also the prosecution, everyone in the prosecution is, from what I've seen, excellent. They're just very laid out. The way that she explained the whole timeline in this opening statements, she didn't go on and on and on, but I mean, she just laid out, I mean, you could listen to her opening statements and be like, done. Let's all just go ahead on home, take them out back, And I mean, I'm joking, obviously, saying that, but they were just so methodically laid out, like, here's the evidence. And again, thanks to him, he made this evidence very clear. So that's it for right now. I hope everyone's doing well. We're going to be doing a new podcast. There's links down below. Also, don't forget, if you're subscribed to me and you want to know when my videos pop up, hit the bell and that'll let you know. I've had several people email me that not getting notifications, and YouTube has us change that, you have to click that bell. Like I say, ring that dinner bell, and I'll come running. So that's it. Anyways, I love you guys, and we will talk soon. Bye.